Hi, and welcome to Printin and Playin. Today we're going to be talking about a game from Cheapass Games called Fish Cook. Fish Cook is a game where 2 to 6 players play French sushi cooks, and they're all competing in order to try to be the best French sushi cook there is. This is a game that is actually a commercially made product from Cheapass Games, but they've been kind enough to also release a free print and play version. So let's go ahead and check it out. Alright, so what you get when you download Fish Cook is all of the printables. You will get your farmer's market, your fish market, 36 recipe cards, and 102 tokens representing 6 different types of ingredients. You'll also need 12 dice, a marker to use as a first player marker, and a marker to use to keep track of your days. The bell, by the way, is completely optional, but kind of a fun addition. Okay, so to start the game, each player gets 2 of these recipe cards, and they are placed face down in front of the player and kept secret to start. For now, I'll go ahead and I'll pretend we have 2 players, and I'll place another 2 over here. Then we set up what is called the cooking school in the middle of the board. And that is 4 cards that are placed face up and open. And then the rest of the deck is placed face down above that. Once that is done, we start placing items in both our farmer's market and in our fish market. And the way we do that is this. First, for each item on the fish market, we take one of our dice and we roll a number. That number for each item is going to be how far we fill it on the board. And I'll go ahead and I'll just start left to right. So we'll start with, for example, rice. It's in 2, and you can see on each spot here there is a picture of a die, and that means that this is going to be filled up to the spot that shows a 2 here. So I'm going to fill from the bottom up, and what this does is you've got your food item here that's available, for one for each token, and the number down in the corner is how much that's going to cost when somebody decides to buy it. And you can see this creates sort of a supply and demand thing here, where the less of something we have, the more expensive it's going to be. We do that for each item. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I should be able to speed up the video so we can get through this in a second, but I just want to go through and show you how it's done for the whole board here. Okay, so we have our farmer's market filled with all the ingredients that are going to be available for the first turn. Now over on the fish market, we do something similar. We take all 20 dice, or I'm sorry, all 12 dice to come with this game. We're going to just give those all a roll. Well, 12 dice are hard to roll at once. There we go. And each one is going to be placed on the board per the number that rolls up. Again, starting from the bottom up in order to create that supply and demand. So the ones will go here. We've got a bunch of 4s here, so I'll do that one next. 4, 4. And if by some chance you were to roll so many of a certain number that you go past what the board will hold, you'll re-roll those and start over again. Okay, so that starts the setup to start the game. And then what happens is the first player is going to be the first player, or the last player that is, who actually cooked something. And what happens is the day is going to be split up into several days, and the number of days is going to depend on the number of players you have. A 2-player game will last 3 days, 3 or 4 will last 4 days, and 5 or 6 will last 5 days. And each day goes like this. There is a morning phase and an evening phase. In the morning, the players get to buy ingredients. And what they do with that is each player starts with $100. And the game does not come with money, so you'll have to supply your own money. You can use either play money or Monopoly money. You can use poker chips. Or if you'd really like to stick with the Cheapass Games theme, on their website they actually have play money that you can download and print out yourself with different characters from all their different games. But what happens is at the beginning of the turn, each player in turn will get the choice to buy one ingredient from either the farmer's market or the fish market. And again, what they're buying is going to cost whatever the number is down in the corner of their item, either the fish or the item over here. So let's say player 1 decides that they want to buy some roe or ginger. That'll cost them 2, and they take that token and put them in front of them. Then the other player decides that they want to buy a 4 fish, which would cost 7. Now a word about the fish. Each one of these is going to come up with a number face up. So for example, the 4, when that is bought and placed in front of the other player, that needs to stay a 4. And the reason for that is that on each of your recipes here, that shows what type of fish you are going to need in order to make that recipe. Each die represents a fish. The higher the number, the bigger or the higher quality the fish is. And what happens is the players go around in turn, each time deciding to take something off of one of the markets and paying for it. And that goes around and round until either a row has been completely bought out of the farmer's market, or we have completely run out of fish. So see, this player hasn't bought any fish yet. We'll want to go ahead and want to get some over here. Okay, so let's say the last item was bought in one of the rows on the farmer's market. That ends this round with the next time around. So what happens is, when that happens, in order to notify that we have one more turn in order to buy ingredients, we hit our little bell to announce that we're at the end of our buying phase. Each player gets one more chance to buy something. And that's the end of the morning phase. Then we go into the evening phase, and what this is the time where we will try to cook based on the ingredients that we have in order to make money towards the end of the game. Now the way we do that is going to be based on our recipe cards. There are 3 ways we can make recipes. It can either be from your hand, from cards that have already been played and will be played in front of you, and I'll show that in a second, or it can be made from one of the cards out in the center. And the way that you make a recipe is this. Each card, see if we can focus it in there without too much glare or anything, shows the ingredients that you need to make that item. This shows the type of fish you need, and it needs to be that value of fish or higher. So for example, with this one, you need either a 5 or a 6. If this was, example, a 2, it would need to be a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, just that number or higher. You need one of these and one of these. If you're able to combine those and make a recipe, then you will score the amount of money down in the corner. In this example, I don't have the right ingredients to make that. Probably should have looked at that before we bought our ingredients at the beginning of the turn. Let's see what we have for our other recipe here. This recipe requires a 6 fish, some rice, and some roe. Now that I do have the ingredients for. I have the 6, I have the rice, and I have the roe. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and make that. Since this was in my hand, this now gets placed out in front of me as one of my menu recipes. The items that I'm using to make that get disposed, they go back to stock, and then I score based on the corner here. And what this score means is this. You've got two different numbers here. The 32, you are always going to make at least that much when you make this recipe. If you make this and it is your recipe, either from your hand or from your menu out on the table, you're going to get 32 plus this bonus score down here. So you would make 36 bucks making this. If you made it from the center, from one of these, you still get this dollar amount, but you don't get the bonus. And lastly, every time another player plays one of these out of their hand and lays it out in front of them, let's say, for example, this other player had played that and played that out, you also have the option to make their recipe. And if you were to do that, you make that dollar amount, but then the person that you can use the recipe from makes the bonus. So you would make $37, and the opponent that you borrowed the recipe from would make $5. What happens is each player gets to make one recipe. It goes to the next player in round. They get to make a recipe. And let's see. Our opponent actually didn't buy anything to make what they can. So what happens is either they will buy, if they didn't buy everything that they needed, they weren't able to buy everything they needed, and they are unable to make a recipe, then they have to pass, and when you pass, one fish gets discarded. So if I were to come back here, I have this recipe, I can make that one, I can make any of these 4, or if my opponent had played items out on the table into their menu section, I can build one of those. Now right now I have a 5 fish and a mushroom, and there are no cards out that allow me to make either one of those. I don't have anything that I can make with just a 5 and a mushroom. So I'm going to have to pass, and that's going to cost me my fish. And the turns go around until everybody either uses up all their fish, either through cooking or through having to discard, or everybody decides to pass. When that happens, the round is over, and then the person to the left, or the last person who actually had an action, such as making a recipe, gets the first player token. So that would go to the next player. This starts the next day. That moves up. The boards are refilled just like we did the first time. And then we go back to cooking recipes. Now, the first 2 cards that you get, those are the only 2 that you get for free at the start of the game. After that, in order to get more cards, you have to do that by one of a few ways. One is you can buy one of these open ones for $5. Take that and add it to yours. You can blindly take a recipe off the deck for $2. Or if you make someone else's recipe, you can take a chance on stealing that recipe. And in order to steal a recipe that you already tried to make, what you have to do is roll a die, and it has to come out to this number or higher. So if I decide that I'm going to make this off of my opponent's menu, I'll roll a die and see if I can get 4 or higher. In this case I got a 4, so I would be able to steal this as my own recipe and take it away from my opponent. That is now mine. So play will continue in this fashion until we get to the end of the day, depending on the number of players. So if this were a 2-player game, when we get to the end of day 3, everybody in the morning has bought their ingredients. In the evening has made whatever ingredients or whatever recipes they can, made as much money as they can. There's then one final bonus where the person who has the highest number of recipes in their menu area with the same number of fish, so if the person with the most 5s or the most 3s or the most 6s will receive that dollar amount as a dollar bonus. So if you have the most 5s, you'll receive a $5 bonus. If you have the most 3s, you'll receive a $3 bonus, and so on. Once that is done, everybody adds up their money, and whoever ends up with the most money at the end of the game wins. Okay, so what did it take to put this together? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have our tokens, our 2 boards, and our cards. Those are what we got with the download. Now, in order to make these, it's actually pretty simple. Our cards, we use the file for that in order to download onto cardstock. And cardstock is simply just a thicker paper that you can download from office supply departments in your stores or an office supply store. It's just a little bit thicker than your normal copier paper. And that is still a little thin compared to, a store-bought playing card, but it's a lot thicker than just regular paper. And in order to help out that thinness and stiffen it up a little bit, what I also do is I'll add one of these card protectors. And that does 2 things. It adds a little bit of stiffness to it. It makes it a little bit easier to deal with. And inkjet is something that'll smear if it gets wet. So if for somebody has a little bit of a moisture from a drink on their hand or something like that, that'll protect the card. So you do that with all those cards. Now the boards, those are each printed out as well onto regular paper, or you can print them out on the cardstock. I actually usually prefer to still print these out on the cardstock. The ink is a little bit less likely to run through the paper, and whatever's behind the paper is a little bit less likely to shine through if you use cardstock as opposed to regular copier or printer paper. And those get printed on the cardboard. That is, you take your cardstock that you printed on and glue it to cardboard. Now, where I get the cardboard from is a lot of sources, but what I'll do is I will collect cardboard from various food products, mostly. Like this was a cereal box. I simply glued it onto the front of the cereal box where all the printing is. And this is the inside of the cereal box on the back of our board there. I did that with both boards. And then lastly, we pretty much do the same thing with the tokens. Each of these came on a sheet with several on a sheet. I glued those to some cardboard and then cut out each one. And again, I used cardboard from various products that we've bought, usually food products. And on a few of these, in fact this one here, you can even see that the board I used actually had a coupon or something on the inside. Doesn't really matter because you're not going to really see that part anyway. You're just going to be looking at the front of these. Lastly, the start token. They didn't actually come with this, but I decided to make my own. I just took an image of our chef, printed it out, and then used a circle punch in order to make about an inch there, and then glued that to the center of a poker chip, and that is now my start token. And then lastly, for our day marker, you can pretty much use whatever you want, but I just used a bead or a rock that you can buy at crafting stores, and those are often used for, to put into decorative flower pots and that type of thing, but you can use pretty much anything you want there. And then as far as other things you have to add yourself, you of course just have to buy your dozen dice. You may be able to find a good deal on those bulk. Honestly, the best deal I found on them so far is at dollar stores. And then our bell, that I picked up on eBay for $3 if you decide to go with that. And really, that's all it took. So that is Fish Cook, a fun little economic game based around sushi that you can download for free from Cheapass Games. You can also get this product professionally made for about 16 bucks by contacting your local game store. But if you're in a crafty mood and you want to check out a pretty fun game that again is not real hard to build, go ahead and go out to the Cheapass Games website, give it a download, craft it together and give it a try. I think you're probably going to like this one.